Welcome on board the Royal Research Ship Discovery, where we are currently in full flow of a huge restoration project, mainly focusing on the stern section, but also on the upper decks, the weather decks, and the bridge area. Now, one of the amazing things about the restoration project is that we are linking ourselves in a very strange way to HMS Victory, to the Cutty Sark, to a historic railway carriage, and a shipwreck from 1917. And that link is teak. It's very, very difficult to get Burmese teak, or it's now known as Myanmar. To get teak, it has to be over 100 years old. It's very heavily regulated, and so it's a very difficult and expensive thing to get this amazing teak that is so suitable for ships. We were very fortunate though that just as we were starting this restoration project, two huge pieces of teak came up at auction, and the story of that teak is really incredible. In 1917, a ship called the SS Pegu was leaving Burma, Myanmar, and making its way across to the UK. On board, it had teak. It was to be used for fortifications in Europe during the war, and unfortunately, that ship was torpedoed and sunk with the loss of one life. The teak logs settled down the bottom of the ocean inside the hold. Now, it was known what was on board, but there was no need for it. It was left as a wreck. Fast forward to 2010, and there was a need for historic teak, and that was for the Cutty Sark. Their restoration project, which started in 2006, had a catastrophic fire on board, and that meant they had to replace a lot more than they'd expected. And they had the almost impossible task where they were told they had to use historic timbers where possible. And so the great idea of raising that teak out of the cargo hold of the SS Pegu and using that on board. And so a huge project was launched, which meant that these sometimes up to 3-ton pieces of teak were lifted out of the cargo hold and kiln dried and ready for use. And so we now have Cutty Sark using this teak, and the Victory also have this teak. And we brilliantly were able to secure some of the last pieces of teak available, which we've had planked at the Scottish sawmills, so we're currently using local workforce where possible, and we have it on board. And we've already started to use it, so some of the repair timbers have been completely planked using this teak. Some of the small repairs have been made and they've worked through. And the amazing thing about the teak is that it is in almost brand new condition. I have a piece here, and this has been obviously cut off of the 20-foot long piece that we have. And what you can amazingly see is how little damage was caused at its time at the bottom of the ocean. So there are small pieces where worms and so on have worked their way through, but almost completely perfect. And that means that we are able to repair the decks of the Discovery using teak that was felled in 1917, meaning that some areas are now older than the pieces that were restored in the restoration project in 1994, the 1980s, and even back to 1924 when the ship had its massive refit to then become the first ever Royal Research ship. So actually some of the timbers we're putting down are older than those pieces. It's a fantastic story that we can have that on board the Discovery to this day.